The Ride Along is the 17th episode of the second season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by John Fortenberry, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about what happens in this episode. And it's a really good episode. It's a really great chance for Robert to shine because it doesn't happen that often. So when it does, it's kind of special. It starts off with Ray and Robert watching cops on the television. Their shoes are on the table. This wound me up so much. They're wearing their shoes, their feet are on the table. No, thank you. Robert is not really happy that Ray is basically saying he doesn't run after people, he doesn't do the proper cop work, and he tells Ray that he can come on a ride along with him to see what he really does. And Ray is hesitant to agree to this, but he doesn't want to appear like he's scared of this. He doesn't want to seem like he's scared of doing something Robert does every day. So he has to ask Debra, thinking of course that Debra will say, no, of course you're not going on a ride along. And Debra says yes. So he has to do this, and he goes over to Robert to pick him up, and Frank is busy sticking his fork in things, and Marie doesn't want Ray to go on this ride along. She doesn't want Ray to get hurt. And they end up going. We're in the car. We have Robert's partner, Sergeant Judy, played by Sherri Shepherd. Sherri Shepherd played Rhonda in Friends. And Ray is making a lot of comments. He's not trying to be nasty, but he's bored, so he's passing remarks. And then an emergency call comes through from Marie. It's not the most exciting part of the episode. I'm just not a huge fan of things that are set in cars. I don't know why. It's a strange aversion I have. And it didn't really appeal to me very much, but it works well enough. And I really liked Judy as a character. We then stop off at Nemo's for a bathroom break. And Ray and Robert are talking about things, and somebody comes in with a gun to rob Nemo's. And this is where Robert really gets a chance to shine, because he tells Ray to get down, and he crawls along the floor, grabs onto this giant pizza, and as the guy robbing the place turns around, he throws the pizza into his face, which is a pretty clever tactic, because it obviously completely threw him, it knocked him to the floor. Robert was then able to arrest the guy, which I thought was pretty great. And it was great to see him in action because we don't get to see it that often. And obviously, a really brilliant performance there from Brad Garrett as well. And the next thing we see is Ray going home and lying on the bed with his clothes on. And of course, Debra wakes up and asks him what he's doing, and he begins to explain what happens, and I think Debra had a very believable response. She started hugging him and kissing him, but also hitting him for getting into that situation in the first place. And Ray starts to talk about what happens, and he uses the word hero to describe what Robert does. And I think that this is beautiful. Not just because we rarely get to see that kind of sentiment towards Robert, but also because there are thousands of police officers all over the world every day doing exactly what Robert did. And the show is doing a little bit to acknowledge that actually, while it is part of their job, it's still an incredible thing to do. And to the rest of us, like Ray, it would be a terrifying situation. But in that moment, Robert wasn't allowed to be terrified. I'm sure deep down it is a scary experience, but he has a job to do, to protect people, and he did it so brilliantly. And Ray thinks that Robert isn't getting the credit he deserves, so he calls the paper. It's a lovely thing to do. Unfortunately, it kind of backfired, because the following morning, Ray comes in with the paper, and they wrote about him, about Ray. Because, of course, people are used to seeing Ray's name in the paper, so it's a story about a regular columnist, and he goes over to see Robert, and Robert has already read the paper. And I think we have a great moment here with Marie as well, because Marie finds out from the paper what happened to Ray, and she becomes really annoyed at Robert and really anxious about the situation, and she starts offering Ray all of these different foods, and I think she responded in exactly the way I'd expect. Robert goes out to walk Shamsky, and we find out that the reason Marie doesn't make a big deal about it with Robert is because she doesn't like to think about it. Because, as we know, Robert is going out doing this every single day. And I guess if Marie allowed herself to be worried about Robert and telling Robert every day that she was worried about him, it would actually become too much. It could make her unwell. And I've never been in that situation, but I would imagine if your child or partner is in a situation where their life could be threatened every day just by going to work, if you allow yourself to think about it too much, it could do potential damage. So actually, I think Marie kind of burying her head in the sand is a way of protecting herself from that. And I think it was nice to actually reveal that and show that actually it's not that she doesn't care about Robert or that she cares more about Raymond. It's that it's too difficult for her to think about. Whereas with Raymond, it was just a one-time thing. Ray then joins Robert on the walk with Shamsky, and he tells Robert, "You were something." And I think Robert really appreciated that, getting that kind of approval almost from Ray that actually he did think he was something important when he's doing his job, and that he has a newfound respect and appreciation for him. And it was a nice moment for Robert. And we then end with Ray and Robert tucked up with blankets and Marie fussing after them because they decided to not button up their jackets when they were walking Shamsky. It's a nice way to end things. I think it's a really important episode highlighting the amazing work that a lot of police officers do in general, but also a really great episode for highlighting what Robert does. Because a lot of episodes are Raymond having successes, or Raymond getting attention, or getting awards, and Robert's on the sidelines. And that's not to say, well, I was going to say that's not to say Robert's job is more important than Ray's. To an extent, yes, of course it is. And I'm saying that as a writer. But at the same time, it's nice that while Ray is absolutely allowed his awards and his successes, it's nice for Robert to get a chance to shine and to show just what amazing work he does on a regular basis. So pretty great episode. Definitely one that I really thoroughly enjoyed, and with some really important highlights as well. The ride along is pretty great.